This episode is brought to you by Self-Care for Diabetes, a virtual online program that's doing diabetes care differently.
We don't tell you to lose weight. Instead, we help you create positive and meaningful changes that make your life with diabetes better than before. Visit selfcarefordiabetes.com to learn more.
Welcome to Body Kindness.
This is our special series on self-care for diabetes concerns.
I'm Rebecca Scritchfield.
And I'm Glenys Oyston.
Let's bust some diabetes myths and spiral up together. Hey, Glenys, how you doing?
Hey, Rebecca. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I always love getting to talk with you, and I'm really enjoying the work that we're doing with folks on self-care for diabetes, and I'm excited about our topic in the podcast today.
Oh, me too. This is one of the number one things that gets me fired up that I love to talk about. So what we're talking about today is this sort of myth that exists around weight and diabetes. It's the myth that dominates our world, and I think there's so much to unpack around it. This idea that you have to lose weight in order to manage your diabetes. And all the programs that I've ever seen in my entire life, in my training, conferences, webinars, books, it's always weight-centric. And it says lose weight as the top recommendation for positive outcomes for diabetes. And it's frustrating because we know that's not necessary or true. Even on their website, the American Diabetes Association, who, I think is a very valuable organization and provides a lot of good information, and that's why this is frustrating. They'll say just lose a few pounds. Losing a few pounds is going to help you better manage diabetes and it's literally in big, bold letters, lose weight for good on their website. And it just makes it look like weight loss is essential for diabetes care, or else you're not doing it correctly. And that's just false. It's not true. Yeah. And the frustrating part to me is that they also make it look like it's easy. It's just something, just lose weight, right? Like, okay.
Yeah, it's just a choice, right? This is all up to you. It's a choice.
Absolutely. You just naughty person who's not losing weight, just lose weight. And anybody who's been on diets knows that is just so misleading, that it's not just, eat less. And in terms of eating less, we were looking at this this journal article from the ADA Diabetes Care journal. And I don't even want to say the word, but it's talking about the management of the treatment of type 2 diabetes. And the calorie recommendations make me laugh out loud when I see them. They are so low. I mean, they're recommending for women, and I hope nobody takes this as something they should do, but like as low as 1,200 calories. And we both know that's something that you would maybe give a 7-year-old. I think I probably ate more than that as a 7-year-old. I mean, that's so ridiculously low and unsustainable for most people. And that's frustrating that somebody would just throw out a calorie recommendation. We don't do that. We want to trust people to know how much they need to eat. Yeah. We'll include the link to that journal article in the show notes, because I think if it's something you could see what we're talking about, and, again, there's so many flaws in research. I mean, so many flaws that we actually separately did a module about, flaws in medical care and research and kind of what's reputable and where are there gaps and things like that. Because if you think about how you get information, you might get it from the media or even from a physician that got, something, but, it's like science says this or science says that. And we don't always step back and question, in the research. And it's in this particular thing that was, talking essentially about quote, weight management at those higher weights, those O words, and in the study, basically recommending and, these super low energy intakes. And you have to stop and question, like, am I going to get enough to eat? Am I going to be satisfied? I'm going to be able to live my life and feel good and have real positive mental health. Every time when there is a number shared, I think comparing it to like, so this is the growing needs of this tiny human, it can in some ways help a listener be like, you know what, this isn't right, and I think that caution, that pause is a really good thing. And certainly just hearing, hey, you have diabetes, do this, it's like everything sounds like such a bad punishment and it sounds hopeless. And that's why there's a shame spiral, right? Episode 1. So, and it's just, there's much, much better ways of handling it. But when I went to the website, the American Diabetes Association website, what I got frustrated about is seeing how they perpetuated confusion, right? So by pairing, quote, weight loss with eating and exercise, right? Eating and exercise are behaviors. There are choices. There's flexible things that you could do that fit your life in there, right? But weight loss is not something that you control. But what they were doing is aligning, right? If, eating and exercise is going to result in weight loss, right? As if any and all changes to food and movement will, right? There's that promise. It will result in weight loss. And crediting that it's a weight loss that made diabetes better, not necessarily eating and exercise. So what if you make change to your eating and exercise and you don't lose weight? Is that bad? We're really kind of hitting on what we've dealt with clients and why we really needed to help people try something different. And absolutely the truth is, regardless of what happens to your weight, it's the positive changes that you make in your eating, exercise, also other things like stress and sleep. But it literally is about the choices you have control over, that they can have benefits to your health and well-being, regardless of what happens to your body size or that number on the scale, if you even get on the scale. So when the ADA says to lose weight for good in those big, bold letters, it's actually misleading and even harmful to mental health. And I just really wish these organizations would understand and acknowledge, right, that there's poor evidence that people can lose weight and keep it off. And that those who do, that it improves their health, that we believe it as a society, but there's actually not strong evidence that that is actually true. So we're going to get into all this today. I'd love to start with healthcare providers because this is where the diabetes risk conversation or diagnosis begins. And this is where weight loss conversations can happen too.
Right. And the truth is that there are not that many weight neutral healthcare providers at all. Let alone providers who focus on diabetes care without recommending weight loss. The experience of somebody trying to find a doctor who's going to focus on their actual self-care, what would actually help is it sort of goes like, first you have to find a doctor who won't press weight loss. And that's, they've already tried, folks have already tried weight loss. So to find a doctor who's not going to start out with that as though, hey, have you ever tried weight loss, it feels virtually impossible. I think there are doctors out there who will, be open to the idea of I'm not focusing on weight loss, but almost always it feels like they're going to start with that. And then the client or the patient has to sort of spend time trying to figure out how to communicate their needs, right? Like, okay, what do I want? I want you to really pay attention to what I need here. I've tried weight loss. You're not hearing me. This can't be the only way to take care of myself. And just, you're having to reinforce these boundaries in a power dynamic that is just not in your favor, right? Like, this is all just to make sure you have to have that you get your needs met rather than end up with terrible advice to lose weight that you've already had, that you've already tried, that's never worked in the past for very long and has probably harmed you. And that just, I think, tanks motivation for self-care in the end. I've had so many clients come kind of dysregulated after a doctor's appointment. They're like, oh, I've been doing all this great stuff. My blood sugars got better. And they still said I had to lose weight. And it just feels like we go back to square one. And this is, they go into that shame spiral that we talked so much about in our first episode in this series. And it's just, it's just so hard for them to move forward after the voice of authority has said you got to lose weight. Medically, you might lose some weight before your diabetes diagnosis is a side effect of diabetes. And so weight gain with treatment might be about your self-care improving. And I've seen that. And doctors are still saying, oh, your blood sugars are better. But what about your weight? And that is just painful.
I know.
That people have to go through this.
Yeah. I'm even thinking of people in our recent groups who have
just talked about, I think I might need to leave my doctor, or, so much stress around the situation, right? Like if you're lucky to have insurance and, knowing that they're not going to have someone who's health at every size and form, having so much fear, it's all this emotional labor around protecting themselves. And they're so afraid of how is it going to go? And even to your point, and, I laughed inside my head too, because we have, and it's not like, haha, this is funny, but like, this is a ridiculous, right? Like kind of thing, because, was the doctor even listening when I set my boundaries, or was it that they wanted to check that box that says that they talked to me about it? And in the end, sometimes we end up having to help people, pause and think about the bigger picture need to see the doctor and the benefit for that particular focus, and how to just almost like you're in some sort of video game, right? And like kind of shoot down the other ideas. Nope, I'm here for this. I'm here for this. And yeah, I mean, we've learned in our groups, most doctors don't even ask about a trauma history or an eating disorder history, let alone general permission. Like, hey, I was wondering if we could talk about your weight, or if you want to give me a number and I'll report it, or we could leave it blank if you wanted. Like basic consent would be nice, so that patients had a chance to, oh, this is the opportunity to set some boundaries, and this is the history I'd like to give. And so it's, I think that, these are things that we can relate to, and it's just a matter of recognizing where is the problem. I've had clients who've lied to doctors. They just felt so much shame, didn't trust their doctor would understand them, wouldn't judge them, didn't believe that the doctor would do anything to make a change. And obviously, so you can't be truthful to your doctor. How can you get the best possible care that you deserve? So we know it's a big problem, but I wanted to talk a little bit more, like specifically about weight cycling and diabetes. As the reality is, many people will consider specific diets, right? Despite, I listened to your podcast and it was great, and then I tried this, right? Sure. So we're saying we don't recommend it, but we fully accept that some people will, right? They'll try something specific. Some of them might lose weight as part of the diet. It doesn't last. Some won't even lose any weight, right? We've seen that too. Or like I tried it and still didn't lose any weight. So for those who don't know, weight cycling is basically what happens. Like that's kind of a term, right? To use what happens if you lose weight that wasn't natural for your body and then you regain it. So like a cycle, down and up, down and up. People tend to blame themselves rather than just biology, right? This was meant to be this biology. And so for example, they'll say like, oh, I don't fill in the blank, keto, right? For a few weeks, I lost X pounds, but I couldn't keep it up and I regained everything I lost. So you notice that if that's the sentence, the story in your mind, right, you're blaming yourself, and not necessarily the fault of the restrictive plan. Right. So that is the example of weight cycling. It's very common when you don't take a weight neutral approach to habit changes. And I was hoping you would share with listeners more about the harms of weight cycling.
Right. And so it's the up, the down and the up, the down and the up that we're talking about with weight, and this diet didn't work or it worked for a while and then I couldn't keep it up. And then I try another one. And so, we work with people who have done that quite a bit. And it is like, there's a lot of evidence on this now that weight cycling is actually harmful. And people are afraid if they don't lose weight, it'll get worse. So I don't blame people for going on that weight cycling journey. They've been told that it's really harmful for them to be at a higher weight. The media headlines are so dangerous. We found on one WebMD article that says just a little weight loss can put diabetes into remission. And that's so misleading. And not to mention, they say 10% of body weight. That's not a little weight loss. Although if you're at a higher weight, it's only a little weight loss and leaves you at a higher weight still. So it's very confusing. Like, the truth is there's no effective way to keep it off long term. And that restriction that leads to weight loss, it just actually masks the symptoms of diabetes. It doesn't make it go away. There's not really a way to put diabetes into remission. I hear that. It's a very zeitgeisty thing that people are saying. And, it's sort of like you can put it into remission as long as you just stop eating. It's like, yep, okay, that's reasonable. The truth is most people can't sustain that level of restriction that makes it seem like it's gone away. And it's not due to their failure, but it's just the nature of restriction and weight loss itself. The body doesn't want to do that. And so, science doesn't know, like you said, if it's the weight loss that makes the difference or the behavior change that leads to weight loss. But essentially what we know is once you've gone on these weight cycles, you're looking at a lot of harms. So it's loss of muscle mass. And, we know that better muscle mass actually helps improve blood sugar regulation. You always get that loss of lean body mass and muscle mass with weight loss. You're going to end up with a suppressed metabolism. So you've got a body that naturally is going to store more of its intake as fat. You've got an increase in inflammation with restriction. We know that's true. From various studies that people have done, Janet Tamayama comes to mind in her study on cortisol and restriction. And, diabetes is an inflammatory condition. So if you're increasing your inflammation while you're restricting, it's like, of course, we're seeing worse, blood sugar outcomes after all of that ends. And then, of course, the weight regain, which is often more than was lost in the first place, and just a lot of disordered eating symptoms after going on and then off a diet. And those disordered eating symptoms just make blood sugar control so much harder. So, a lot of harms to weight cycling.
Yeah. And like the diet was disordered behavior. And then, so technically there are symptoms then, right? And then when you come off of it, as you're healing, you also see these other symptoms or things that look like negative side effects. But what were they predicated on, right? They didn't, if you lose muscle mass related to restriction and then, whereas we know the better muscle mass, right? Again, something you can do, and you don't have to be a bodybuilder, right? But we're talking like some chair shoulder presses with a resistance band or, very, very lightweight 1 pound weights even can make a difference in your muscle strength, endurance, and mass, which helps with blood sugar without and actually being well fueled for that, right? So
yeah. People are acting as though these diets that people go on are healthy eating, and I think we both know that they're anything but that.
Right. Yeah.
And so the weight cycling it's all attributed to, it's associated with, increased risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease. So, when people are thinking of going on another diet, really start to think about what are the long-term risks here. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that it would be helpful for listeners to share some great medical facts that should help you want to diet less urgently, instead follow more of a self-care approach, which is, about being positive, being kind to your body, trusting your preferences and your needs and your desires. So good friends of ours, Reagan Chastain, a well-known speaker and fat activist. I'll make sure I include our podcast chat in the show notes for that. Love Reagan and all the wonderful work. And Louise Metz, who is a medical doctor who practices from a health at every size perspective. So she's a practicing medical doctor practicing from a health at every size perspective. They created these new Health at Every Size, or HAES health sheets. So HAES health sheets for information on common medical issues. And one of them is for diabetes. So this is an evidence-based freebie PDF with references. We're going to have a link to the website in our show notes so you could look at the different ones that they created, and you can see it on the web. You could download the PDF. That could be great to find its way to your physician or family member who is recommending otherwise. But I wanted to read a snippet from it and just encourage you to go out and grab that link in our show notes and check out the website and share it wherever you can have an impact on folks. The treatment of type 2 diabetes focuses on controlling blood sugar. You have many treatment options depending on the degree of elevated glucose, Some people choose to focus on behavioral interventions before starting medications. Some people choose to focus on medications rather than behavior changes. And some do a combination of the two. And just as a side note, our Self-Care for Diabetes program is mostly behavioral, and we absolutely support any and all medication choices too. And we cover meds, somewhat in our program and the course, but we definitely talk about it in our live groups as well. But we're not saying, making any sort of, this is the best med or do this or that type of, advice as part of our program. The more important thing to know is that we want to help, you with your habits, and we embrace all of your choice options, throughout. And so I think what's really important to make known is that it is behaviors and meds that help manage diabetes, not attempts at weight loss. In fact, weight loss interventions for diabetes have not been shown to improve cardiovascular complications and have been associated with a decrease in life expectancy. While it's not your fault, the fat phobia and stigma around type 2 diabetes can become a problem you may need to deal with. Perhaps most importantly, don't panic. There's no need to make massive changes to your lifestyle overnight. This is a condition that you can learn about and manage. So end quote. So that's just the excerpt that's part of that handout, save for my side note, just letting folks know about what we do on the combination of behavior and medication. So we definitely want folks to check that out, and hopefully it helps you on your journey.
Yeah, those Hayes Health Sheets are I'm so thrilled that they exist now, for people to use.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the mental health benefits of not centering weight loss goals, for individuals, for families, and just how to help yourself feel better about this choice, because it can feel very lonely to feel like you're going against the grain. So, first, not centering on weight loss is going to allow the joy in eating to return. And we know from a lot of studies on like intuitive eating and other non-diet eating models that the joy in eating is really important. We have to be able to like what we're eating to be able to feed ourselves reliably and well. Restriction just takes the joy out of eating, period. So if you're thinking you're not going to get enough to eat and having to go hungry, that just takes the joy out of eating, and you're not going to want to feed yourself. And what we know is like regular meals actually help with blood sugar control. And, we've worked with people who are like, I can't even get a meal together for myself because I feel like I have to eat this healthy thing and not the thing I actually like. And there are so many ways to approach sort of a joyful relationship to eating and eating the food you want and managing your blood sugars, that it is possible. And then you can feel better about that choice because, as I said, the evidence is all on your side. We see great results in blood sugar control from the non-diet way of eating and living, and from behavior changes that are actually doable and achievable and enjoyable. We have seen this, right, in our practices. And families then can support each other in behaviors that actually feel good, rather than like the family turning into the police, the weight and the food policing, which doesn't feel good for anyone. And so we're talking about sort of that spiral up kind of, this is positive self-care. And I just think it's, centering weight loss feels like a failure when these diets are set up to make you fail. Like nobody can really maintain these. I won't say nobody, but a tiny percentage of people maybe can, continue these diets long term. Most of us can't. And instead of feeling like a failure constantly, you're actually feeling like, hey, what I do matters to my health, and I can do this.
And when I was listening to you, I just had this memory of in one of our groups where somebody was talking about the difference in like that burden of, oh, I can't do this because I have to do this like healthy thing around food. And when they actually stopped and looked, that there were certain veggies that they liked and some that they didn't like. And when they focus on what they liked and said, you know what, I'm allowed to have a shorter list. Like that's where my preferences are. And then next went to like taste, like, oh yeah, you know, that suddenly that there was this shift, and that it was what was my thought process that led to what was on my plate, right? Following an external rule from a specific diet, which means that my taste preferences doesn't matter, or my food preferences don't matter. You just got to shut up and follow those rules. And the difference, right, and how we help people see, well, that is actually a healthy mindset just by changing that approach and attitude, et cetera. So I really appreciate you saying that. You know me, I love my tools and resources. There's a lot of resources in the diabetes program. And if anything, you had to contain me, like, Rebecca, a little bit less. But I thought I'd offer one here today for listeners. This is a reflection or a journaling prompt designed to get you closer to your desires and consider the impact of your choice options. And I really love writing. It's a very important outlet to get in touch with and express true feelings. So I really want to encourage you to try this out, even if you're not much of a journaler. You know, it could be any piece of paper. You could write on the back of a junk mail envelope if you want. So anything. But try to grab a writing utensil and a piece of paper. Other than that, there's no one right or wrong way to do this. And you could get a sort of typed out version of this in our show notes with all the steps. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take 3 big and deep cleansing breaths and just let yourself settle. So you might say inhale, exhale with each breath. You might say the word settle, right? But you're just taking a nice, big, slow, and deep breaths. And then when the 3 breaths feel complete, ask yourself, please allow me to approach this with a curious and open heart. And the first question you're going to journal on, how will life be better for me if I don't emphasize losing weight as a goal for diabetes care? So one more time, how will life be better for me if I don't emphasize losing weight as a goal for diabetes care? And you'll want to just give yourself some time to really think about that. You're trying to explore ways that life would be better. So even if your family member recommends losing weight, or doctor, anybody, that the choice option is yours to not emphasize it. And how would that make life better for me? And I do recommend you give it at least 5 minutes. If you have time, give it like a good 15 minutes to just think and write and just let yourself explore. Remember, this is about kind of getting to your truths and to your facts. The other journaling prompt that I wanted to offer is, how could my life be more difficult if I choose to diet? So how could my life be more difficult if I choose to diet? And I'm sure you're listening, hey, those 2 questions go together. Yes, they kind of do. But you could pick one or the other. Sometimes you might want to think about how life could be better first, and write some things out and read it, every day for a few days, kind of let it sink in, right? Then separately, or another time, look at how it could be difficult. Or you might do them kind of both in one setting and just kind of add to it a little bit more each day. But literally give yourself some time, like a whole week, longer if you need it, but like give yourself some time to really ask yourself these questions. See what you write down as your truths. And I think that you'll see the answer will be really, really clear, and it will give you some amount of emotional energy to deal with what kind of strength you need to resist the pressure, because this program isn't, we're outlier clinicians. The program is an outlier. There's just a very small element of truly helpful diabetes care that is weight neutral.
And it can feel difficult to kind of be outside of the norm. But we believe that there are people out there who really need to be outside of the weight normative paradigm in order to truly be healthy. And if that's you, we really want to connect with you and hope that we've helped you in some way with this conversation and this reflection prompt.
I love journal activities like this because I think they're so great at exposing our underlying attitudes that sometimes we don't even know we have. Mm-hmm. And once you know that they're there, I think it shortens the half-life of them considerably. So I just think there's so much value in doing those.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, Rebecca, thanks so much for hosting me on your podcast. This is always fun to hang out and chat with you. And I just really appreciate getting the chance to talk about this and helping people to not feel like failures around weight loss and to feel like they can actually take care of themselves well without focusing on weight loss. So I appreciate the space you've made on your podcast for this.
Thank you. I appreciate you every day.
And that's our show. The podcast is made possible with support from listeners. Please donate to help offset production costs at gofundme.com/bodykindness. And please rate and review the show when you have a moment. It really matters. Let's keep the conversations going on Facebook. Search Body Kindness and request to join the group for Body Kindness readers and listeners. Have a question for us to answer on a future episode? Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question. Body Kindness books and audiobooks are available wherever books are sold. To request a signed print copy, visit bodykindnessbook.com/order. For other questions about this podcast, please email info@bodykindnessbook.com.